East, everyone. So, um, I haven't really had the chance to talk much about tribal stuff as of late, but I will mention briefly that last week, Principal Chief David Hill put a stay on the processing of any freedmen applications until they can readjust the laws to include any verbiage of the 1866 treaty. Because, as he rightfully points out, it is not the job of the Supreme Court to make laws or to undermine the Constitution, which he swore to uphold. The National Council and the vote of the people decide these things. So the way this is going about, and as others such as Eli Grayson erroneously points out, the Supreme Court did not practically amend the 1979 Constitution. It undermined it. And they don't have the authority to make laws. They have the authority to decide if it's constitutional or not, but that depends on the authority of the Constitution now, doesn't it? Just saying. That means that they're not going to be able to vote. That means Rhonda and Grayson are not going to, or Grayson and Kennedy, Grayson and Kennedy are not going to be able to vote in the upcoming election that's happening soon. And that's just the way it is. And so just thought I'd mention that. This might be some fourth dimensional chess because it looks like he's pursuing, he being the chief, principal chief, seems to be pursuing other legal means to figure out this whole situation. And the Ron Graham case the federal case has not yet been, decided. Now, it'd be really interesting because Mr. Ron Graham does claim to have by blood ancestors. If this is documentable, it'd be very interesting if the Department of Interior were to say, oh, you mean you're an actual Indian? Oh, well, yeah, then we're going to give you a blood quantum card based off of that. Oh, no, you're not a freedman. That would be interesting, okay? That might actually not work out so well for the freedmen. That'd be very interesting. But he's been pushing the whole, oh, I'm a freedman, I'm a freedman, I'm a freedman. And that's the issue that I really have with the Creek Freedmen is not so much the fact that they want to be citizens, it's the fact that they're putting their freedman status first. There are freedmen, quote unquote, who have Indian blood. And I've seen the documentation to prove it. So I know there's individuals that because the tribe is only going by the final Dawes roll, it does not take into account 1895, 1896, I think 1890 as well, 1882, and other prior rolls that you can trace back to through the Dawes, and it's easy to do, okay? They don't take those into consideration in terms of how we determine citizenship. And that sucks because honestly, they should, and that would actually eliminate part of the problem. It means that some of these individuals would actually have a blood quantum card. They would be citizens by blood. Not all of them, probably not the majority of them, but some of them definitely would be. And I think that would be the fair thing to do. But that means that we have to amend our Constitution to allow other roles that predate the final Dawes. And that would also bring certain by-blood individuals and their descendants, like, retroactively back into the nation. Because some chose not to be part of the final Dawes or the land allotment. So, but anyway, I digress. It'd be very interesting, though, if the federal government would say, oh, well, you are an Indian because you can prove Indian ancestry. So, we're not going to make you go by just the final Dawes. We're going to look at all the other criteria. Oh, you have by-blood ancestors? That means you're an Indian. Here's your federal CDIB card, Mr. Ron Graham, et al. Okay? To whom it applies. It'd be very interesting. And I kind of hope that happens, to be honest. And it would also take away some of the power of the whole Freedmen cause. It would, honestly. And it might put them in a different direction of, oh, well, let me prove my by blood ancestors because of the federal government will recognize it, then at least I can be recognized as an Indian, right? And if they do have the blood, then they should be recognized as Indians. But if they don't have the blood, they should not be recognized as Indians, in my opinion, because they're not. So meanwhile, there is a lot of, not maybe a lot, but there's been some discussion online, of course, from certain parties who disagree with me, who don't give a crap. And Ron Graham is one of these individuals. He hasn't been talking to me, obviously. Well, at least, well, I'll just state for the record, it's not obvious to you viewers. So I'll make it obvious. He has not messaged me at all. I don't know if he even has social media. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he does. But in any case, he and individuals like him, some of those other individuals have been commenting with the same type of narrative, which is that if they can't have it, that it all needs to be torn down, burn it all down. Down with Muskogee Nation, that the freedmen cannot be citizens. And I say, hell no. We have a right to exist. We've always existed. We existed before slaves were brought over from Africa in slave ships, because that's the origin of the freedmen, is the slave ships. I'm sorry. They were not originally here along with all of the red man. They don't predate the red man here in this land. Okay, the Stajati people, meaning red people, Stajati, okay? The Stajati were here first. I'm sorry, the Stelesti were not here first. The Stahetki weren't here first. Stajati were here first, by any measurable metric, okay? And that's just the way it is. So, people are still saying, oh no, you're the colonizers. It's like, what? What? How does that work? How does that work exactly? Because that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't recognize any actual historical facts to prove its point. Okay, so I'm dealing with kind of idiots like that still, and if they can't have their way, they'll burn it down. And they care first and foremost about the freedmen more than they care about Muskogee Nation. And because of that, especially more than anything, I do not want the freedmen to be citizens of the tribe, because there's too much of that going on. And that's always been part of the case, it seems like, and I'm not down with that. I'm just not. I'm not okay with that. And if the chief can find some way to circumvent the Supreme Court, I hope he does. But here's the thing also, Grayson and Kennedy, they're like trying to sue the nation, trying to, force the tribe to expedite their citizenship cards. And the Supreme Court actually shut that down. I mean, the same Supreme Court that I've been critical of, they shot it down. So I'm glad. I'm wondering, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about Nico George Thompson? What if I'm wrong about all 5 of those individuals who voted to bring the freedmen in? What if that's all just sort of a ruse to eventually overturn that same decision, because they don't have the authority to actually do that, and they're just placating the freedmen until they can finally find another legal loophole to say, okay, bye-bye, no more. I don't know. And then there's other guy, I think it was named Aaron for Tulsa. Aaron for Tulsa. I think that's his name. Anyway, not Tulsi. I can't believe I said that. Tulsa's where my mom was born, by the way. So he constantly and rightfully points out that this should be the people voting for it. There should be a constitutional amendment proposed and then voted on to decide this issue, not, what the Supreme Court did. Again, unless they're doing this as sort of a temporary placating of the freedmen, but it seems like a very elaborate attempt at that, if that's the case. So I don't think that's the case, but it's interesting that they shot down Grayson and Kennedy's attempts to expedite the processing of their Freedmen citizen cards, okay, or their Muskogee Nation citizenship cards, whatever they end up looking like, whatever the Freedmen cards look like, if it just says 0 blood quantum, or whether it says Freedmen on it, which I know they'll be mad because that's a mark of slavery, but they call themselves the Creek Freedmen, the Muskogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band, etc., etc. There's a couple different groups that use this nomenclature, okay? And if they're going to use that nomenclature, why shouldn't we be able to? That's the hypocrisy. So I know that Eli gets on his soapbox and it's like, oh, it's a mark of slavery, da 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 da. When other tribes do it, yeah. What about the Muskogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band and their website? I mean, seriously. Yeah, what about their website? They use the name Freedmen themselves. So what is this? Is this like a case of, oh, I can use the N-word, but you can't because you're not black? Well, I'm sorry. You don't get to be an Indian. I am. You're not. You don't get to use the term. How does that feel? To all you freedmen out there who don't want freedmen to be on your citizenship card, okay, but yet you use the term all the time in relation to the Creek Freedmen and all the other freedmen out there and the multiple organizations just of Creek Freedmen alone that are using the term freedmen all the time. How does it feel? Because I don't see you as Indians unless you have our blood. If you have our blood, I see you as an Indian. I don't see you as a freedman. Okay? And that's just the bottom line. I don't care if you're black. I don't. I don't care if that's your skin color. If you have our blood, you should be a citizen if you want to be. And like I said, as I always say, we should be able to go back to earlier roles, post-removal, okay? So this does not include the Porch Band or any affiliated groups back east who were not part of the Old Settlers or the Trail of Tears, okay? We're talking just the Oklahoma, the main Muskogee Nation, the real Muskogee Nation government, okay? If you're a descendant of those by blood Indians, you should be able to get citizenship, in my opinion. If you have adequate documentation to prove your heritage, okay, then I think you should be able to be a citizen, regardless of your skin color, okay? But if you can't prove it, but you can only prove freedman ancestry, then you're a freedman. That's it. That's it. You're a freedman. That's your ancestry. And you're not an Indian, and you shouldn't be able to legally change the definition of Indian to make yourself feel better, and to whatever stupid reasons there are to say, oh, I'm legally an Indian now. No, you're not. You're not an Indian. You're not. Okay? And so stop it. But you won't. You're going to keep pushing this stuff and pushing it, and we have to just keep fighting back. And that's all there is to it. And unfortunately, some of the traitors in our midst need to also fight alongside us on this issue. But some of them are too dumb to realize that people like myself do not want slavery back. We just want an Indian tribe for Indians only. Simple as that. So I think our current Constitution does and should have preeminence in the situation as far as our current set of laws. And some say, no, but what about the 1867 Constitution? What about the Treaty of 1866? Okay, but what about our Constitution that all of our duly elected leaders are following and have been following since 1979? Okay. And if it was rightfully voted on, if that is the case, and so far there hasn't been enough sufficient evidence to say that it wasn't done properly back then. I mean, again, just saying, it's hard to say either way if the freedmen really were given the adequate information about voting. And my mom and my uncle, who were by blood, didn't vote. I know my mom didn't vote. My uncle probably didn't know. He wasn't living in Oklahoma at the time. So how would he have voted back in those days? There was no, Muskogee Citizens at Large organizations. There was no Facebook groups. There was no Facebook. Okay, like there's no email groups, there's no any of that stuff. Didn't exist back then. So how would a citizen living off the reservation be able to acquire their ballot? Okay. And my mom definitely did not vote. And she was, basically by the metric at the time, she was a citizen. They didn't have the individual cards yet, as I understand it. Or they're just starting to create those. But the people were still, like, if your ancestors were on the Dawes roll as Indians by blood, like you were able to, like, I mean, she went to the Indian hospital as a child using her grandma's roll number. So, I mean, people didn't have their own roll numbers yet unless they were one of the Dawes roll allottees. So it's a bit complex, guys. So, but it's also simple because not everyone had their own stuff. But they were still the Muskogee people. They're still the citizens of the tribe. It just wasn't as organized as maybe United States citizenship was at the time, for example. Okay, but it was getting organized, and it did get organized, and it got organized. I mean, our infrastructure is post 1979, post 1979 Constitution. Okay, what we have now, what we've built, is because of that era and that document. So to circumvent that, to illegitimize any part of it, is to illegitimize the whole document. You don't practically, amend the Constitution by illegitimizing part of the Constitution altogether. Okay? I mean, that's not how the rule of law actually works. If we're going by the Constitution, then that is the law of the land. That is the supreme law of the land, not the Treaty of 1866. Okay? So I'm hoping that Principal Chief David Hill finds a way to continue to delay the situation until we can actually maybe put it to a vote and then finally put it to a rest the right way. If the Freedmen come back in that way, then so be it. But that'll be because we, the real Muskogee people, voted on it. We, the real Stajati, the real Indians, voted for it. Not because someone at the stroke of a pen just made the vote for us. And then, of course, the supporters are like, well, you see, James, you see? In the comment sections of my posts from 1 year ago. I seriously, guys, I mean, people are like, all of a sudden, oh, you see? It's like, yeah, we didn't get to vote on that. So I disagree with the Supreme Court on this. And the chief is right to disagree with it. His authority comes from the Constitution that he swore to uphold. So he's obligated to do what he is doing right now. He's obligated to. He's obligated to delay the processing of the Freedmen applications until this can be fully ironed out. And yeah, in truth, he's obligated to have us to, wait till this is voted on. So, and then whatever way it turns at that point, then we go from there. But if the people vote, nope, no Freedmen, then they'll keep fighting. They'll fight. They'll keep talking. They'll keep complaining. But we can also keep fighting back too. And as long as we have a constitution, as long as we have representatives who actually are going to uphold the Constitution, then, if they've sworn to uphold the Constitution, then they're obligated to uphold 1979 and its rules and regulations and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I hope they all do. If we vote on it, we say yes, they come in, then we decided at that point. The National Council can, propose a law, a constitutional amendment. We, the people, can vote on it, and then it can finally be settled. But even if we settle it and say no, the Freedmen are going to keep fighting. But again, I hope Ron Graham gets a federal CDIB card if he has actual by blood ancestry and can prove it. And they're like, oh, there you go. You you're by blood, so your freedman status is kind of irrelevant now, and just kind of see where that goes. But anyway, we shall see, and hopefully, whatever happens next will be in the best interest of the Muskogee Nation and the Muskogee people. And I'm sorry, but when this lady was commenting today and in recent days about, basically she'll all get burned down if she doesn't get her way. That I let her know, you're the very reason that I don't want to see the freedmen come back into the tribe. I'm sorry. The loyalty, I notice, is not for the Muskogee Nation. Look, maybe Damaro Solomon Simmons, because I saw his more recent stuff after the decision was made, and he was humble. He ate a big fat piece of humble pie, because before it was the no more separation, segregation, degradation, and the whole his whole attitude was the opposite of humility. And now the most recent one is he's very humble. It's we're not going to pursue any other stuff. Of course, then that ended up he's like, we're only pursuing citizenship, and that's it. Maybe possibly lawyer fees. I don't know. Maybe or legal fees, and as long as we're able to get the citizenship, that's all we're going to keep fighting for at this point, is what he's saying. I tend to think he kind of means it. He seemed pretty sincere in his humble speech and Q&A. So I want to give credit where it's due. So maybe he actually just does want citizenship in the tribe, and maybe some people just want citizenship but don't want to see it destroyed if they don't get it. I don't know. But anyone who thinks that the tribe should just disappear and no longer exist because the freedmen don't get their way is a traitor. I'm sorry, you're a traitor to the Muskogee Nation of Oklahoma. If you're a citizen and you want to see us disappear, the freedmen don't get their way, you're a traitor. You're a complete traitor. Okay? If you're a non-citizen freedman who want to see it all burn if you don't get your way, then you don't deserve to be a citizen of the tribe. And shame on you forever. I'm sorry. Shame on you. Because you don't deserve to be a citizen of our tribe. I'm sorry. I don't care. We have a right to exist regardless of whether you are with us or not. Whether you're a part of us or not, we have a right to exist. And that's just the bottom line. We existed before the United States existed. We should have a right to self-determination, with or without you. So if you want to see us burn because you don't have your way, that's just too damn bad. So I hope the chief figures something out here, okay? And I hope we finally get to vote on this issue, and the cards will fall where they fall at that point. You guys know what my vote's going to be, obviously, but that's because I'm dealing with people like this. Maybe if I talked to more freedmen who were humbler and just wanted to be citizens, my opinion might be a little bit more charitable. But then I deal with these people online. I'm like, yeah, you're the problem. That sounds like war. You want war with us. I don't want you around if you're going to fight against us. This isn't some peaceful petition for citizenship. This is gimme, gimme, gimme. If you don't give me what I want, you should burn. Your whole society should burn because we don't get what we want. And that's it's childish. It's inexcusable. It's I'm not for that. That's it. So yeah, I would actually encourage any freedmen who want to be part of us to speak against these idiots among your cohorts that want to see things burn, because we don't want you around. A lot of us don't want you around if those idiots are part of your cohorts, okay? We don't want that. And we shouldn't want that. Why should we want that? Why? So please, to any freedmen out there who might be watching this, or any of your allies and supporters, etc., put these other people in check if you want us to change our minds on this issue. My mind's already made up because of this stuff. Other people's minds may not be made up. You know, and if not for the fact that this is a legal fight to begin with against us for determining our own future as a tribe, if it was just like, hey, you know, we were once part of the tribe, we'd like to be part of the tribe, you know. I mean, I understand that you know, you guys changed the Constitution in 1979, but you know, we really feel like we can be a benefit to the tribe and we can build a nation together. We have a history with each other, blah 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 blah. You know, if it had been presented like that to begin with, because my first exposure to this whole issue has been, we want to sue Muskogee Nation to make them give us what we want. And I thought, what? How does any non-Indian have a right to sue an Indian for Indian citizenship? That makes no sense to me at all, regardless of the issue of slavery. Okay? Where did the slaves come from? They weren't Indians originally. So, I mean, you know, it's like, okay, we own some slaves. Who sold them to us? Okay, who brought them here? Who sold them to the slave ships? Okay, I mean, the rabbit hole goes kind of deep there. I'm not saying it was ever right to own slaves. I don't think it was right to own slaves. I don't believe in slavery, but I mean, you got to look at the history of how it came about. And then you got to look at the fact that we were a nation before we had slaves. We were a nation after we had slaves. We were a group of people with our own ethnic identity, with our own cultural traditions. That I don't care what anybody says. You could say, well, buy blood is a colonial white man thing. Oh, okay, fine, except for the fact that we had clans, which are passed from mother to child. Okay, i.e., by blood. By blood. That's how we acquired our citizenship, through our mothers. That's how it was back in the old days. Okay? If you believe in... and whenever I point this stuff out, it's crickets. When I point this stuff out in the Facebook groups, I point out the traditions, and I point out the clans. I point out that means by blood was a thing back in the day. Crickets. That, or I totally agree with you. I mean, really, that's what I'm getting, is that type of thing. It's crickets, or I agree with you. So, and how could they argue that? How could they argue that? And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this in a recent video. I definitely did, at least in a recent draft for a video. The 1866 Creek Treaty, the Article 2, the beginning of it, it isn't just in slavery. It still allows for slavery as a punishment for crimes. Slavery and involuntary servitude. We covenant that it will no longer be a thing except as a punishment for crimes. So if I jaywalk, and let's just say tomorrow Solomon Simmons ends up making his way into the, you know, let's say the Freedmen get their citizenship, and, you know, they're out to get the rest of us all of a sudden because they get into the government. They're like, okay, well, James Satterley, he jaywalked. Oh, okay. Well, you're a slave now because it's your turn to be a slave now. And jaywalking is a crime. We're going to punish you with slavery. Okay. I mean, I know, I don't think Mr. Solomon Simmons would do that, by the way. I'm kind of joking here, but think about that for a second. Under the beloved, holy, sacred Treaty of 1866, we can still have slaves as a punishment for crimes. What crimes? Because it doesn't make that very clear now, does it? It's just a punishment for crimes. I pointed that out to Eli Grayson when he brought the stuff up recently on one of these groups. Crickets from him, because it's true. Clans equal by blood. Article 2 equals slavery can still happen. And I don't want that. Obviously, the Freedmen descendants don't want that. Obviously, their supporters like, Miss Teresa Golden doesn't want that, but likes to try to bludgeon me with that. So, which is stupid because I don't support that. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I think that the 1866 Creek Treaty should not supersede our current Constitution. I don't. So, and with good reason all around. So, anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. Please let me know, for or against what I'm saying. Please leave some comments, because I want to know, do you still think that the Creek Treaty of 1866 should be the supreme law of the land while allowing for slavery as a punishment for crimes? I mean, if you're for the treaty, then you must be for slavery as a punishment for crimes. Slavery and involuntary servitude, just to be very perfectly clear. So that means chain gangs can be done under Article 2 of the Creek Treaty of the Sacred Holy Covenant of 1866. Okay? Let me know what y'all think. Let me know for watching, and until next time, chichatlis.